Okay, so in this video, I'm going to go over how you can deploy individual packages in your monorepo using CircleCI. Now, before I begin, I just want to say that this is very tricky to set up, and there's not a lot of great articles online, and so a lot of this stuff I kind of just mashed together from a lot of different sources and did a lot of trial and error to get something kind of working. Now, also, we're going to be using CircleCI, so if you haven't watched the other two videos that I talk about how to use CircleCI, I recommend watching those first because I'm going to be pulling from those. We're going to be taking a look at this CircleCI config that I have up here, and it's basically a mash between the previous two CircleCI configs and then some monorepo stuff thrown in there. But before we dive into this and take a look at it, I just want to first explain what the goal of this is and why you would even want to do this. So the idea is if you have a monorepo, here's what I have. I have a Node application or a Node server, and I have a React application in a monorepo. So what I want to do is I want to deploy them maybe at the same time, or maybe I want to push my code up. Basically, I have it in a monorepo, and I want to push my code up to GitHub. And I don't want CircleCI to deploy my Node application if I didn't make any changes to it. And I don't want my React application to deploy if I didn't make any changes to it. So the idea is we need to add some kind of if statement to say, if I changed only the code in my React application, only deploy that when being pushed to CircleCI. So that's basically the gist of this video is how do you create that if statement to do that. We're also going to talk about how to version your code, and both of those things we're unlocking with Lerna. So that is where Lerna comes in and is a huge asset to this. All right, so let's dive into the CircleCI config and kind of talk about how this all works. So first off, nothing new at the top. This is pretty much just what I used for the last two videos. So my server needs these two Docker images, and then both of them just need the node image. After that, we'll see our first difference when we check out. So after we check out, you'll notice I added this post get fetch all. So what that does is we basically want to get the tags for the project. So the tags are stored in Git, and to be able to fetch those tags, we're going to say git fetch all, and that'll give us the tags for Git. And we're going to see why this is necessary later on. Next up, we have restoring the cache and saving the cache, and it's a little bit different. We look at the yarn lock file because the package.json file doesn't really change at the top level. It changes kind of in the packages themselves. I'm not sure if this is the best way to basically cache a monorepo's modules, but nonetheless, this is the way I have it here. And then I'm just having freeze lock file here. I can't remember why I added that. You may not need it, but basically it is not going to change the yarn lock file. And then after that, this step is the same-ish. So I say yarn CI test. So if we look at our package.json, we can see what that is. You'll notice that that just says Lerna run CI test. So what that does is it's going to run tests in both my Node application and in my React application. So I don't care whether I made changes in either of them. I'm just going to go ahead and run the tests. So again, if we take a look at this, we can see the CI test. This basically just runs jest in the Node application and runs jest in the React application. CI test, and this just runs npm test, which we talked about is just React scripts test. Okay, cool. So we run the test in both packages. After that's done, basically we want to say, if that fails, obviously we'll change our code, but assuming the tests pass, we're like, cool, tests are good, we're ready to deploy this guy. But before we deploy, we want to create a new version of our packages. And so by version, what I mean is if we click on the package.json, we can see here's the version of the packages. So React is on 0.1.20, whereas React Node may be on a different version. If we come click over here, we can see it's currently on the same version. I haven't pulled down. But anyway, that's the version that I'm talking about. This is going to be automatically incremented for you with Lerna. So to do that, we run this yarn new version. So that's something I created. And I call this Lerna version command. Now to do that, basically what it's going to do is it's going to actually create a commit and push this up to GitHub. So that's where you'll notice I added these two things right here. I added git config global, my email, and my name. And these are just environment variables that I set for my GitHub email and GitHub username. This is just so it has the right config for when it's actually making the commit. All right, so back to this guy. So learn a version. This makes a commit for us. And you'll notice I am saying -- conventional commits -- yes. -- yes just means don't prompt me to say yes. And then conventional commits. This is something I recommend Googling conventional commits. This is if you've seen stuff like chore and then, I don't know, release or feature, where you see, and basically you have the parens right here. It's a way of committing your code. That way a machine can parse your commit messages and decide what version your code should be created. So it's basically a way to commit your code. So this is just basically saying I'm using conventional commits. I'm not really using conventional commits, but it works fine using it this way because it's going to automatically create the version for us. Now, Lerna needs to basically, it's going to create a new Git tag and push that up to GitHub. So to do that, we need to give it permission. So to actually give it permission to do that, if we go into the settings of this and we look at, I believe it's checkout SSH keys. All right, so you can see I have two SSH keys here. You'll notice I have a user key and I have this CircleCI Monorepo deploy. All right, so this one's the one you're going to see, and you're going to notice that it only has read/write permissions. Sorry, not write permissions. It only has read permissions, and we need write permissions. That way, CircleCI or Lerna can write to the GitHub repository. So to do that, we have to add a user key. Basically, you're going to see a button here that says, maybe if I go to actually my other repo, it'll show me. So if I go to React and I go to that section, yeah, you'll see right here it says create and add a user key. Go ahead and click that, and that'll basically create you a new key, and then make sure that it's preferred, the new user key that you created, like mine was. And basically, Lerna can then commit code to GitHub. So that's what that will do. But if for those of you that are following closely, so I push my code up to GitHub, then CircleCI runs this, right? And then in CircleCI, we're telling Lerna to version it, which then pushes up another commit to GitHub, which, as if you're following along, this will infinitely loop, where basically the CI pushes to GitHub, which then triggers a CI build, and it just infinitely builds CI, which is very bad. And I did this when I was first doing it. We can avoid that by going into our lerna.json, and we can add this little setting. So for the command version, we're saying using conventional commits. Yes, so this is a big kind of duplicate. I guess we don't have to add this because I already specified it in lerna.json. But you notice I'm saying a message here, and I'm just saying this should be the commit message when it pushes up to GitHub. And the only thing that really matters here is this %s is just the release version, I believe. But this tag at the end I said skip CI. So when Lerna pushes up to GitHub, this special tag tells CircleCI not to rebuild it, so it does not infinitely loop now. So that's that. So this yarn new version is going to create a new version of code. So I just want to show you guys, this is what a run of it looks like. Let's just look what this looks like so far. So if I click on yarn new version, you're going to see what this looks like. So in this particular commit, I only made a change to the server code. So what happened is it looks at the changes. It's all one package changed, and it's bumping it from version 20 to version 21. So that's what that does, and then it's going to push this up to GitHub, and it also makes a new Git tag, which we're going to see in a second. This is the same thing. We are going to be building some stuff in Docker, so we're both installing Docker client and setting up a remote Docker instance. All right, that's good and dandy. After that, this is where things get interesting. So, all right, so there's this git tag command. This is just for debugging purposes. So if we look at the git tag, here are all the tags. All right, so this is all the versions. So I was doing some testing, pushing some stuff, and it created a bunch of versions. Basically, every time we release our code and Lerna version runs, it's going to create one of these tags for us if something has changed. Right, so we saw up here that it was converting it from 20 to 21, and then it's going to create a tag called 21 over here. So this tag is important because we can basically use that to reference code. So the previous release was version 20. That's important to note. So now I have basically some code that I got off of Stack Overflow that I mixed two things together. So let's take this piece by piece because this is kind of a long command, but it's actually very simple. So there's this bit right here. All right. So this bit right here, this basically just gets the second to last tag. All right. So the first tag, or the last tag, the most recent tag is 21. The second most recent tag is this tag 20. So that's all this does. And basically to do that, this gets the last two tags. This gets the second line of the tag. And then all I'm doing is I'm exporting this in a variable called tag. And the way you do this in CircleCI is you say echo and you say export in parentheses, or sorry, quotations, and you put that into the bash environment. And then I just echoed the tag to show you what the value of that is. So if we take a look, all that command is doing is it's putting in this string into this. And the reason why I want that is so that this command works at the end. So this is where the other magic happens. So you saw in that CircleCI build that we only want the server, or only the server change, so we only want to deploy the server in this case. So if we look at what this does, the CI deploy, it says learn a run CI deploy, but this is where the magic is. To prevent CI deploy from running in both the packages, and you'll notice I didn't have CI deploy in either of these. All CI deploy does in the React application runs build and then deploys it to Netlify, and then Node. If we take a look at the deploy, all it does is run the Docker, CI Docker, which builds Docker, logs in, and pushes it up. But anyway, what prevents it from running in both is we say -- since, and then we put the tag. So basically it's saying compare our code to this tag and say what packages changed since this tag was released, only deploy those. And so that's it. So that's kind of the magic command right here that gets it to work. You'll notice the reason why I'm not doing version 21 is we literally just released that version. We create a new version here. So if we compare it against the latest version, of course nothing changed because we're comparing it against itself. So we need to go back one more version. And so that is what this is doing. But anyway, that is how I was doing it, is this -- since. That's the key with Lerna, to only run this stuff across packages that change since. So you could do the same thing if you wanted to for your tests. If you only wanted your tests to run on the code that's changed, that's another optimization you could take. But note, this is pretty tricky to get working. And also, I've had times where the -- since kind of works kind of oddly. But it works most of the time. And there may be better ways to do this, but the idea of this is it's only going to bump the version of packages we changed and deploy the packages that we changed. And this is all getting utilized by Lerna. Anyway, that is how I was able to get a monorepo set up. That was probably a lot to comprehend. But let me know if you guys have any suggestions for this to improve this, or if you have any questions. If you want to try setting it up yourself, let me know. I can definitely help guide you through it. If you run into any stumbling blocks, I probably hit those same errors when I was trying to set this up.